So good day, future mythics. Before we dive into today's lecture, I'd like to introduce a formative ungraded activity that you'll be doing throughout this session. And before that, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Vince Matthew de Ortega. You can refer to me as Sir Vince in this lecture. And this lecture will be all about examples of biologically active polypeptides or polypeptides with biological activity. So, about the activity, you'll no about the activity. You'll find a crossword puzzle provided in the video description below, along with the answer key for, of course, self-checking later on. So now that that's our way, let's now proceed to the lecture proper. Oh, and so before we formally start, I would like to present our intended learning outcomes. So at the end of this lesson, students should be able to spread definition, general characteristics, and sources of biologically active polypeptides, endogenous and exogenous, differentiate biologically active polypeptides based on their functions, and lastly, explain the role and clinical significance of biologically active polypeptides in human health and in a medical setting. So this also will also serve as an outline. So we'll first start with the definition, general characteristics, sources, and then move on to the classification based on function, and lastly the role and its clinical significance. Now that that's out of the way, let's now proceed to the lecture proper. So again, good day, future medtechs. Let me ask you something. Did you know that just a tiny change of amino acids can make you fall in love or just lower your blood sugar? Today, actually, we're gonna dive into the fascinating realm of biologically active polypeptides. They're basically small in size, but they have very huge impact, or very huge in effect. So let's first define what a biologically active polypeptide is. So, starting with the basics, simply put, of course, they are short chains, usually less than 50. Short chains of amino acids, they're usually less than 50. That basically do something important in the body. So, unlike our regular proteins, they don't just exist, they act. They have a job. They are like molecular messengers, healers, and even defenders, and so much more. So now let's talk about its general characteristics of our polypeptides. So of course, made up of amino acids, part of or derived from larger proteins, and are specific in function as they act on certain tissues or receptors. So of course, from its name, they possess biological activity. It means affecting the digestive, endocrine, cardiovascular, immune, and nervous system. So dagang tissue systems na gina-affect with its biological activity. So they are also typically released by enzymatic processes like digestion and fermentation. And when these biologically active polypeptides or BAPs are present and functioning properly, they can actually enhance health and our quality of life. But their deficiency or dysfunction can actually may contribute to disease and physiological imbalance. And here's the kicker. Tiny amounts basically equal to big effects. So this means even a very small quantity of these bioactive peptides can produce very significant biological effects in the body. Take insulin, for example, the peptide hormone. Only just a small amount of it can regulate blood sugar levels across the entire body. That's a big effect of just this tiny molecule. So, one relatable moment, no? Think of them as test results, right? They may look tiny, like your Ng per ml levels, but can diagnose serious conditions, just like your future medtech reports. So now let's move on to the sources, or where these BAPs come from. So these basically come from just two. Let's break it down to two sources, your endogenous and your exogenous. So let's start with your endogenous. So these are naturally synthesized by the human body and play essential roles in physiological functions such as metabolism, emotion regulation, immune defense, and there's so much more. Now for exogenous. So these are basically derived from external sources, let's say your food, many proteins in food, which can be broken down through digestion, fermentation, or enzymatic hydrolysis into bioactive peptides that carry health benefits. Another exogenous source also would be your collagen. You can basically have them as drinks or perhaps supplements and so much more. So now let's move on to the classification based on function. So let's break them down by what they do. So here are the 6 main classes. We're gonna break it down to 6. So starting with your hormonal peptides, you already know the example for this. It would be, of course, insulin. It, of course, lowers our blood glucose, which is it's clinically essential for diabetic patients. So think of insulin as the key that unlocks cells to let sugar in. So as a medtech, it might help you conduct your FPS or HbA1c tests. So when there's no insulin, there's no controls. So next up, you got your neuroactive peptides. So oxytocin is actually an example of this. It triggers bonding and contractions during childbirth. And also your endorphins, which function as natural painkillers. We're also going back to oxytocin. These levels can increase during social interactions, so perhaps with your friends or even with your crush. So ever felt good after even helping a classmate or even helping your crush? Because that's oxytocin right there. It's not just love, it's chemistry. So let's now move on to your antioxidant peptides. So these basically neutralize free radicals and are found in sources like soy, milk, and seafood. So their role actually involves protecting cells from oxidative stress. So in medtech, or in the context of medical technology, identifying oxidative damage markers such as MDA or malondialdehyde is relevant for assessment. Then we have antimicrobial peptides. These basically provide defense against bacteria. These are basically the shield against your bacteria, your viruses, fungi, and an example of this, of course, would be your defensins, which is found in the skin and saliva, and of course, it's an example. So, actually, there's ongoing research in antimicrobial peptides for developing actually antibiotic alternatives. And to understand it better, they act like as the bouncer of your immune system. So, if a pathogen tries to enter, boom, you're out. So, moving on, you have mineral binding peptides. So these actually assist in the absorption of essential minerals like your calcium and iron, which are present in dairy proteins. And lastly, the 6th classification, the tissue repair and growth peptides, which are exemplified by collagen peptides, which support skin, bone, and joint health. So they actually contribute to wound healing and tissue regeneration. So you'll encounter these in clinical chemistry and pathology soon, in your second year, as part of tissue repair studies or healing markers. So now that we're done with the classifications based on function, let's play a really quick game to test your knowledge. So I'll be describing a function and you tell me the peptide type. So this boosts bonding and love hormones. So what is it? So if you've answered oxytocin, then you got it right. So this one regulates sugar in the blood. That's right, that's insulin. And this one is found in the milk and binds to calcium. Correct, it's mineral binding peptides. So now we're at the last part of our lecture, which is the clinical significance of your BAPs. So, I'd like to ask, so why do we, as future medtechs or future doctors, or gusto mong ma-doctor pohon, care about these peptides? Because these peptides, they show up in tests, treatments, and even diagnostics. So, let's consider like 3 key examples that illustrate this clinical significance of these peptides. So firstly is your insulin testing. So this is a very fundamental component now of GTT or glucose tolerance test and is indispensable in the diagnosis and monitoring of diabetes. So accurate assessment of insulin levels provide critical information regarding an individual's glucose metabolism, pancreatic function. Secondly, we have BNP, your brain natriuretic peptide. So these levels of this particular peptide are routinely checked in the evaluation and management of heart failure. So elevated BNP levels serve as an important biomarker. So these assisting clinicians in diagnosing the condition, assessing its severity, and guiding treatment strategies. And lastly, looking towards the future of medicine and nutrition. Bioactive peptides found in food. They are currently the subject of extensive research. So these peptides are being investigated for the potential in disease prevention, specifically in relation to conditions such as hypertension, various forms of cancer, and even chronic inflammation. So if you are a medtech running a diagnostic lab, or even a doctor that has a clinic or a laboratory, wouldn't you want to understand what those peptide levels mean? Because that's real life application right there. So now that we finished all three parts, I will now leave the time to you, the viewer or the student, to finish the crossword puzzle. And perhaps I'll give you 1 minute, or you may pause this video. So now that you're done with your crossword puzzle, let's assess what you've learned today using an engaging call and recall format. This is similar to the minigame that I've given to you earlier. I just state the definition or function and you give me the peptide. So this one, again, controls blood sugar. Of course, it's going to be insulin. It's a hormonal peptide. This one helps us bond. So that is oxytocin, or a neuroactive peptide. This one fights bacteria. You said defensins, that is correct. It is an antimicrobial peptide. This improves mineral absorption. Yes, correct. Mineral binding. So this one slows aging and helps healing. Correct, we got collagen. So it's a tissue repair peptide. So peptide source that comes from food. Exogenous, correct. Peptide source that is made in the body. You answered it. Endogenous, you are correct as well. Now that we've assessed all your learnings, with the crosswords, the small mini games, I'll now present an assignment case study with guide questions that challenge you, the viewer and / student, to analyze real-world scenarios, identify peptides involved, explain function, significance, and basically submissions can be done in the provided Google Drive folder in the description below. So I'll also present it in my screen. So that is all. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot about biologically active peptides, and I hope you would apply this to real life or to your everyday life. So thank you again. I'll see you in next video. Bye bye.